keeps me stable for days. Cars.
Dear editor, there are just too many cars now. Too many people driving too many cars. But there's a much ignored option. We could get rid of all or most of the private cars in Austin, run rapid transit all over town, and build any new growth in the disused parking lots. If we can basically rid our city of private cars, many of our problems will vanish. Let's plan to get private cars out of Austin by 2020. If we don't do this, Austin in 2020 might be a place where no one will want to live. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
Everybody knows there's a traffic problem, but they don't think it's them. They don't realize that it's because they live in a suburb, because everybody they know lives in a suburb.
I know people who never leave their house that they don't get in their car. And that's really damaging. It's wasteful.
And I think those people need to get on their bikes and drive to work.
Oh no, I don't do bikes.
I haven't ridden a bike in so long, I don't think I know how to anymore.
Who's gonna bike? I'm 50. I'm not gonna ride a bike.
Austin's had a bike patrol now for 20 years. They still don't expect to see police on bikes. We're able to catch up with or sneak up on more stuff.
I mean, I have had unpleasant experiences with cops. The simple fact is I fear them more than I believe they're out there to protect me. And I think there's something wrong with that.
I never really thought of bike riding as political, but driving by some of the cars, you know, I guess it is.
This is my very first critical mass.
It does foster a bad image.
Showing the cars that there's a lot of us and they can't just kill us.
There were some movements started around in other parts of the world, in Europe and in San Francisco, that became known as the critical mass movement.
About the same time that critical mass got really rolling in San Francisco, the idea came to Austin. A critical mass ride is often described as a coincidence of bicycle commuters deciding all to commute over the same route, which is not established in advance, at the same time. And this coincidence happens in Austin on the last Friday of each month at about 5 o'clock of the West Mall of the University of Texas. From there, it's unpredictable as to which direction it goes, how long it goes, how many will show up to do this, but it's a bike ride.
Smack dab in the middle of a situation overlooked by fools. Tables turned, lessons learned, you get burned for playing by the rules. Time is lost, that's the cost, oh brother, you get shit on in the end. Scrape for $1, you'll die smiling.
Come on, man, this is fucking bullshit.
There were two factions in the cycling community when critical mass was going. The people that were generally aligned with the Texas Bicycle Coalition, who thought critical mass was a bad thing and was turning the greater community against cycling, and then the critical mass people that thought that the other people had sold out.
They can bring attention and awareness in their own way to what they're doing, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I would just have a different way of doing it.
The idea of critical mass is good. The idea of sort of demonstrating that bicycles have a place on the road is an important thing. I think in practice it's problematic because they mostly piss off motorists.
There's been a big debate in critical mass between those who want to mess with traffic and those who want to be more nonviolent about it.
You are participating in something which is really pretty wacko on the traffic landscape.
Barry Goldwater said something like, extremism in the cause of liberty is worthwhile. Confrontational extremism is not always the best way to resolve problems.
For all the pros and cons that you can say about it, it's
probably the first thing that made me realize that there actually was a bicycle community.
Smack dab in the middle of a situation overlooked by
I like that critical mass is confrontational. I like that. I like that they make motorists angry.
Wherever critical mass has been deployed, it has not only failed, but it's set back the political clock of change for cycling.
I think critical mass is a beautiful thing, just like communism is a beautiful thing. It would work great. The problem, humans are involved.
People question Gandhi and Martin Luther King's tactics. Critical mass is just an act of civil disobedience. It's a non-violent protest.
Especially the younger ones think, oh, this is activism, we're changing things, but like, we're riding our bikes around. You don't change anything by riding your bikes around. They say, well, increasing visibility. Well, sure, but you're also pissing off thousands of motorists. But for me, the point of critical mass is to have fun. When you're riding your bike every day by yourself and you're realizing you're taking your life in your own hands, then there's something very exhilarating and powerful and rewarding about being able to ride with 100 other people who feel the same way.
It was almost an autonomous zone that travels down the road, you know. I mean, you can, woohoo, safety in numbers, you can do anything, we can take the whole road and we're safe.
And all I saw was just riding havoc, and so I didn't necessarily want to put my stamp on it. You know, I don't want to become pack-led by anything. Prison taught me that. No, just kidding.
You voluntarily become part of this mob, you know, and mobs are crazy things.
What does it matter with you having...
Critical mass causes the community itself some headaches, some problems, and gives the community itself a bad name.
I don't have any problem breaking some of the rules, like running red lights and, you know, taking up a couple lanes, but I have a problem with doing it to excess, because when you do it to excess, it's what brings the police there, and critical mass to me is about having fun, and it's no fun when the cops show up.
I think they're calling the police.
in the middle of a situation overlooked by fools.
You know why I pulled you over, sir? It wasn't really a safety issue. It was just another way to harass cyclists.
That was the first time I ever saw Tommy Eaton, by the way, is when I saw him in the newspaper on the front page, veering away with a cop chasing him. So I thought it was just the bomb.
They put a picture of us all on the front page of the paper, and I was out there in front of the picture. That was interesting.
I didn't ride with critical mass at first. I published their letters and articles, and it was only when I started hearing more about the intimidation and harassment of the police and people being arrested for very innocuous little things, and a lot of this going on. I said, well, I think it's about time that I go ride on one of these and see what happens. Well, critical mass reminded me very much of marching against the war. As a Vietnam veteran, I definitely had some strong views, and I got involved in marches and that sort of thing.
As a matter of fact, I went on my first critical mass ride with Fred Meredith. And Fred and I were both students at UT during the Vietnam War and the Vietnam War protests.
When a critical mass ride was gathering on the west mall of the campus across the street in front of the co-op, they would line up 20 motorcycles in formation there, kind of angle parked, with all of the officers waiting there. There'd be 8 or 10 bicycle cops over on our side of the street, just kind of waiting for us to leave.
And we rode our bikes there together, and we turned the corner on 19th and Guadalupe, and there was this line of police motorcycles. We looked at each other, and it was that old feeling. It was that old Vietnam War protest feeling.
It was a show of force thing, same kind of deal. Saying, boy, you'd better not do this because we're here to jump right on you, and we did it anyway.
If we weren't here, you know they'd be all over everything.
Their mentality is they own the streets, and we were trying to take over the streets, and it was us against them.
So it was fear. It was fear of something they had never seen before. So they had to stamp it out with force.
The police are intimidated by groups of outspoken people. It was like they were trying to squash a rebel force that was trying to take over Austin. We were just like riding our bikes.
We didn't know at the time that what they were trying to do was determine who the ringleaders were. They wanted to arrest the ringleaders and hope that the rest of it would go away.
The police knew that there had to be a leader to critical mass, and they were going to find him, and they found that there was none, so they had to get as many people as they could get and take them down.
Oh, there he is yelling right now, see?
Where? Which one? There's one right.
A real tall guy, maybe?
There's one with the peace shirt on.
But that's not the nature of critical mass. You know, the whole point is that everyone is in it together. There's no leaders.
Hey, Sam, that gal in front of you was one of the leaders last week. She was a problem, so if you get her doing something.
When the police were arresting people, and we were saying this is bogus, this is trumped up and bogus, they had this saying, you can beat the rat, but you won't beat the ride. What it meant was, yeah, this may not hold up in court, but we're taking it down anyway.
Single that person out, detain them, throw them in the back of the car. They try to arrest them, but basically what happens is we all surround the cops and yell at them until they let them go.
I mean, some of the things that they would think of to give citations for, they would wait until 30 minutes after sunset and issue tickets for not having a light.
Running out of time.
They would herd people off the street and then arrest them for being on the sidewalk.
We are going to enforce the traffic laws of the state of Texas, the city ordinances of the city of Austin. And we want you to know that there is a means by which you can make this protest. You can obtain a parade permit and make your voices known.
Every critical mass ride, the cruiser that had the Lieutenant Raines usually, in charge of the whole coverage for critical mass, also had a man in the back.
You're on Police TV.
Doing the video. Because of all the police pressure they put on, what you saw mostly were a bunch of cyclists being herded into a single lane and told exactly what to do all of the time, and then occasionally still stopped and cited or arrested.
There's no way I was riding more than one abreast. You have to ride single file as close as you can to the curb.
There's a place where Lieutenant Raines, sitting there, is talking to one of the motorcycle officers about Tommy Eden. He doesn't know who he is. He just says,
I need that guy in the gold shirt with the white helmet.
Want to write him a ticket for violation of parade permit?
I'm gonna take him to jail.
we're just going to arrest him. We don't care whether he does anything wrong today or not. We figured that Tommy Eden's one of the ringleaders. We're going to take that guy downtown.
He goes down. Take him down to show up for the...
But every time the camera would swing from the side window back across the front of the car, you would see that the lieutenant sitting in the front passenger seat, his seat belt was still dangling up next to me.
Move on. You don't want to violate the law.
You know, Austin is a place that is a bit unique in the country, and it is legal for women to go topless. It was something that was decided long ago over sunbathing at Barton Springs. A couple of the critical mass riders at various times of women have decided that they're going to ride their bikes topless. The first time it happened in the middle of a ride.
See this blonde right there?
The guy doing the videotapes kind of likes this gal.
See that tall blonde with the white dress on?
Yeah, which way they're going? I don't know.
They're looping around. They're looping around.
Yeah, they're all going south. Y'all keep moving or you're going to jail.
Tommy Eden's on the other side. The camera is supposed to be trying to single him out, but the camera is locked right on her out the side window of the patrol car, and she turns and she looks and she smiles.
See that?
Yeah. Nice tits.
No kidding.
They wanted to hassle us as much as possible with the whole system, and we found that with subpoenas we could hassle them as much as they hassled us.
I was the first one, I believe, to actually take it to court and subpoena the police officers and the videotape guy.
We just took the tapes down to city council at one point, showed some selected parts of the tapes.
And once that became public, I mean, they were completely embarrassed.
City council, I think, had some representatives show up on a critical mass ride. At least a big black car followed us one time. And then we had no police escort from then on.
I became friendly with the police videotape guy who was videotaping all of the rides. I subpoenaed him, and we would go every month to appear in court. And he said, the heat's off now. at one point because the decision has been made to focus on homeless people now. And the next ride, there were no police present at all.
We felt like we really won the war at that point.
Because it didn't make a difference. They could keep slamming us and slamming us and slamming us, and we're still going to show up on the last Friday of every month, and they could do it again, and it just makes the police look bad.
They never come out gratuitously anymore. They only come out if people take up like 4 lanes on a 4-lane road, and then, you know, all the uppies call us in on their cell phones.
I know anger is not the best way to make change. It is absolutely the worst way. But sometimes when there is so much frustration pent up in me, and I know that other bicyclists feel this way, that it's healthy to have that kind of forum. Otherwise, one day some motorist is going to pull up next to me and honk at me or almost run me over, and I'm going to grab my ULAC and smash their windshield in. And what's that going to do for me? Nothing. So to me, it's one of the healthiest ways to get that frustration out.
What is the solution? I don't really know. Except for to ride your bike, be peaceful. Would Gandhi do critical mass? Hell no.
It's obviously an extension of critical mass. Well, not an extension, but a reaction to critical mass.
We take the right lane and let them have the left lane, and let people go by.
Some of the same stuff as critical mass, but with the slogan, play nice.
I think you need conciliators, you need compromisers, and you also need extremists. It always pushes every issue along.
Editor, I'm really sick and tired of the excessive whining by these car-hating, bike-riding buttholes who possess the arrogant attitude that they speak for everybody in Austin. Well, they don't. Every day while I'm driving my car to work, I see too many skanky, bike-riding environmentalist Nazis. This is America, darling, and goddammit, we love our cars.
Dear editor, it's very absurd for car drivers to call bicyclists Nazis. Nonviolent people aren't Nazis. The Nazis preferred cars to bicycles. They gave us the Volkswagen. The car, not the bicycle, is the bully's choice. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
The world was going downhill quickly and something had to be done, so many of us had been tortured so much by life that becoming a clown was the only logical thing to do.
People are definitely have a need to make stuff and create, and this is a good space for doing it. A need for the bike circus, that's a good question.
Real live Vagabond Clown! Welcome to the Cyclone Circus Puppet Show!
Here in Austin, it's almost like we feed off of that consumption and waste.
The circus kind of selects folks who are like astronauts and poets and crazy people all in one. We're creating this culture 1,000 miles an hour, and so we're exchanging information constantly. This kind of mutant bike DNA is pretty contagious. If we can show that it's possible to live happy in a real sustainable way, real creatively, then it means the world can be redeemed.
Some things that we definitely want to do is bring bikes down to distribute along the border. We want to also ride and do like the nomadic living.
The circus is a stepping stone to the ultimate dream of colonizing the atmosphere, of living in the sky. So we're starting to put wings on bikes. Our initial flying bikes will pedal up a mountain and then fly off the mountain. And then over time, as we grow older, we'll get more and more comfortable with becoming true aerial nomads. I first got involved with Bikes Not Bombs in the mid-'80s as a bike donor. I would dumpster dive for bike frames, and it was a means for the people to circumvent the military embargo of Nicaragua.
We think that bikes are a necessary part of the transportation agenda, especially in cities.
It's been fun to be part of the renaissance of Bikes Not Bombs, because Bikes Not Bombs incubated the Yellow Bike Project.
I guess the first example I know of community bikes is in Amsterdam, the White Bikes. It was a city-sponsored program there, and they released thousands of bikes. Streets are dominated by bikes, cars yield right and left, and it's great.
I've noticed that in this country, there's a lack of respect for communal property, public property, and I think that something like the Yellow Bike Project or free bikes might help make people respect things that belong to everyone.
Once we did decide to start doing it, we just started converting bikes into yellow bikes and teaching mechanics just on a one-night basis. Finally, in the end of January '97 is when we did our first release at Wheatsville.
Riding a free bike into a better tomorrow.
Well, free bikes. Free to ride, but not to keep is the key.
We had an explosion of interest and media attention, and we got like 80 messages that first day that we got the front page news, and it was just like, I got a bike to donate, I got a bike to donate. You know, the community just stepped up, and it's been just growth ever since. In terms of free roaming yellow bikes still available to the public, that's a question that no one has been able to answer, because it's just like releasing an endangered species, you know. There have been several instances where people have painted over the bikes, you know, and at first I was like, wow, that sucks. That's totally going against the public property idea. But if a homeless person gets a bike and goes to the trouble to cover over the yellow paint, you know, and they're talking 2-3 cans of spray paint to totally cover the yellow, then you know they're gonna use it. You know they're gonna, you know, respect it at that point. And that's what is rewarding to me.
For those who can't pay rent or insurance, it's the only mindful way to travel.
One of the things that I think is cool about bicycles is that you can be fairly self-sufficient if you have the knowledge and you have the tools.
A lot of people ask why yellow. Somebody from Texas Department of Transportation, a chemist up there, offered us unlimited supplies of yellow paint. And we're like, all right, well, great, I guess it's gonna be yellow.
For me, the Yellow Bike Project has had two main goals. One is to just put bicycles out there and make bicycles more accessible to people. And the second goal, and maybe the more important one, is that we hold these workshops that are free to the public, and we teach hands-on bike mechanics.
I fixed the chain, I fixed the handlebars I had to fix on my brakes.
I think that they have somewhere to come and just be themselves and not worry about getting in trouble from mom or dad. Just that they get a hands-on knowledge that they don't get to do at school. At school, it's just sit and listen and write, and sit and listen and regurgitate. But there, it's participate and learn, and have a finished product. And just what it does for their self-esteem to come in there and learn how to work on bikes.
A lot of people are like, you know, I don't really see many yellow bikes out there anymore. I'm like, well, you know, we're in the shop daily teaching bike mechanics. We're doing the city employee bike program where we have set up a fleet of bikes for city employees. We're developing the city bike library where you check out the bike and get a bike on an extended loan.
We're definitely a grassroots organization. Community figures very prominently in our role. For something like a bicycling movement to actually gain any ground, there has to be the folks who are lobbying politicians as well as the folks like us who are trying to actually engage people.
Bicycling is inherently political. We're using the public space, yet we're being squeezed out, and it's an inherently dangerous condition because of the way we've designed the streets and the way we have made second-class citizens out of cyclists.
Apparently when I hit, my body impacted the van, we spun around, I was still attached to the bicycle, ended up lying in the street, sort of twisted up in my bike.
This is a solemn march to remember all the cyclists that have been killed, especially Ben. So we're going to try to just take just the right lane and not cause any problems on this particular ride. There's definitely time for more radical action at a later time, but today is just a memorial march.
It was obvious to us that the automobile was a very violent way of life, that it killed a Vietnam's worth of Americans every year, that it maimed far more than that.
Getting in a car trains you to behave in certain ways. It trains you to be aggressive. It trains you to be anonymous and powerful.
We needed gentler ways to get around on the planet. Nonviolence had become a huge element of our lives, so we began to consider how did these two things fit together, nonviolence and cycling.
Where was I going so fast? Was I trying to push? It's not about being first and last. It's about the way you move, like the wind in my face, like the stars in my hair. It's not about who wins the race. It's about the getting there. I'm always watching the clock. I'm always running behind. Too busy with the ticking top. I think it's time to unwind. I am learning a balancing act. We are on our
Dear Editor, at first glance, building several huge, expensive parking garages in Austin seems like a waste of money. But if the proposed garages are movable, they might actually be of use in solving Austin's transportation problem. If we keep moving the parking garages closer to the edge of town and meanwhile build rapid transit lines, we could eventually move all the cars out of town. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
I think Amy Babbage is really cool. I like the fact that she writes in every single week. She keeps the issue in the papers. I think that's great. I remember when she started that campaign. It was in mid-95.
Amy Babbage. I've never heard that name that I know of.
She's got a lot of tenacity to write letters, even though people berate her over just about every letter she writes.
You're going to have to tell me who Amy Babbage is.
Amy is our patron saint, our goddess.
Somewhere in there I became really cognizant of Amy. Part of it was because we began to get responses to what she was saying, and part of it was she was writing so regularly.
When she writes these polite but critical letters to the Chronicle, frequently so many motorists write in with just extreme venom and violence on their minds.
What I like is that a lot of people, when they're trying to slam her, reinforce her arguments.
They think that Amy Babbage is some kind of a nut. She's a lunatic, right? And that allows them to marginalize everyone who has those kinds of views.
She has made a lot of people angry, but out of that anger comes, debate and discussion about the issue.
Most folks live in the middle and don't say a lot and don't listen a whole lot.
The Statesman never would have done an article on Amy's letters to the Chronicle if they hadn't have been the kind of letters that provoke so much response. She's extreme enough to provoke a response from even moderate people.
My favorite idea of Amy Babbage's are the movable parking garages. It's like you build them and then you just start moving them away from downtown, and by the time we're in our golden years, this will be a car-free city.
The idea of having a car-free central business district, it's done in other parts of the world. It's done in Stockholm, and it was done by the president of Volvo.
I think Amy sometimes is absurd. It's not, and sometimes I think she's right on.
She's a dreamer. and we need more dreamers.
She's very idealistic, but you got to have a vision. There's got to be the big vision to go for. There's the everyday trudgery, and if you don't have the vision at the end, what's the point?
Where I disagree with Amy and is the self-righteousness sometimes, where the bike people feel that they're morally superior to people who drive cars, and I think that's silly. When you're sleeping at night, there are trucks roaming all over the United States that are bringing goods and services to the city, and if you're going to partake of the advantages of the city, if you want to have that kind of quality of life, of restaurants and bookstores and stuff like that, you're dependent on gasoline.
Sirs, for many months I have enjoyed reading all the letters Amy Babbage routinely sends to the Chronicle. Now I discover that Amy Babbage sells bicycles. Boy, is that a letdown. She fooled us into believing her credibility, then clubs us with the truth. The truth is, she's just another Republican trying to convince the government to pass laws and spend money to help her make a buck. This is the most disappointing realization to hit me in a long time. This is blatant capitalism in its worst form.
Dear Editor, I would like to thank Mr. Dalton Wall for advertising my business, Easy Street Recumbents, in a letter to the Chronicle. We capitalists at Easy Street can't yet afford display ads in the Statesman, Chronicle, or Texan, so not everyone knows that we sell bicycles. American highway construction is socialism at its worst. Capitalism at its worst is represented by the car and oil companies. Easy Street Recumbents aspires to be part of capitalism at its best. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
She does sell bikes, and so you could say that she was promoting it in order to make more business for herself. But I think anybody who's met Amy Babbage would know that that's not really why she does it. She sells bikes because she likes them. She doesn't like them because she sells them.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I think she is true to herself. I mean, she really is afraid of cars.
I never wanted to drive. I learned how to drive a car when I was 23 years old at the insistence of my mother. I mean, you have no physical connection to it. You just press buttons. I mean, it's... People in cars seem to be completely unconscious.
Amy is running for city council as a
as the human power party candidate, as we call it, though. Right now it's a party of one, but it doesn't need to stay that way.
It's all set up in terms of this asking for money, and which I don't know, I think it keeps a lot of good people out of politics because it's so sort of repellent. It's like the first thing you're supposed to do is you beg for money for your projects, and you're supposed to beg for money for your campaign. And I mean, you know, you just feel kind of bad about doing that because you feel like, well, I don't really need money. What I need is for people to vote for me.
I've known Amy Babbage for a long time. I think she's kind of a funny person. She's very talented. She has a PhD in math. She has a bicycle shop. She's written a number of novels.
I think her message is kind of a one-note message, but I think it's a crucial issue of the future of the city.
Sometimes you have difficulty establishing yourself as a credible candidate if people perceive that you don't have a real chance to win. If she can demonstrate that she's a serious candidate and that she can make a creditable presentation, then she can really help to educate people about bicycles and pedestrianism being legitimate forms of transit.
Transportation is a terribly important thing. And since I'm the only person that doesn't drive a car that is running for office, so I think it would be really good to have someone on the city council who doesn't drive a car. I feel like I'm not telling people as exciting as it is. I feel like I write better than I talk. I hope it gets across better than it feels to me. We are mostly not really political people. We and the idea of running for office, to most of us, it's not that inviting. It'd be kind of interesting, although I think that there would be dull parts, but I could bring my mathematics.
Decide to buy a bicycle race.
We have to think of how we're different.
Well, you know, I ride a bike. We can fix that. If I can talk anybody else into being the front line person, I will not be that person. I think my husband might do it next time.
How did you meet Amy?
Personal ad. Well, it said that she was a mathematician and thought that sounded kind of sexy.
She and Mike have made this very bold commitment to not owning a car. That's as much of a commitment as any athlete makes or any successful business person makes to their focus in life.
There's a lot of people in their cars and they really want something else. Doesn't mean they're willing to go be heroic enough to throw themselves out on the front and get out of the car right now. You see, the bicycle is just a means to an end. But the real focus is doing it without the car.
Yeah, once the fossil fuel runs out, you won't be able to run cars on fossil fuel, but you can always build a nuclear power plant and run them off that.
Dear Chronicle, I believe Amy Babbage put a curse on my car. After reading many of her eloquent letters, I got to feeling guilty about all the impervious ground cover choking Mother Earth just for the convenience of my little Honda. Then I plowed into some dork in a truck who decided to stop for no reason in the middle of a merge on Congress. Amy, darling, enough with the curse. Cars are just too darn handy sometimes. Mine is getting out of the shop soon, and I need to take the cats to the vet. Thanks, Melissa Woodall.
Dear editor, I did not put a curse on Melissa Woodall's car. If I had the power to stop cars, I'd stop all the cars, not just one. And if I could stop only one car, it wouldn't be Mrs. Woodall's. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
You know, I think transportation currently in Austin is a disaster, and I think that's a combination of two factors. One, a lack of intelligent alternative planning, and two, actually the progressive environmentalist community hatred of roads. And the question is, the roads encourage growth or the roads accommodate growth? And I think you're getting the growth anyway, and when you don't build roads, you really kill communities.
The kind of great villain in this whole transportation battle is TxDOT. They have absolutely no interest in bicyclists.
TxDOT has a mission, and it is to cram cars down our throat. And
they are pretty good at it.
They hold the purse strings and the most important political pork in the state, which is where the roads get built.
There's nothing more subsidized than public roads. The welfare industry isn't as publicly subsidized as the roads in this country. That's where the socialism in this country starts.
I don't believe that Austin is going to be able to build its way out of traffic problems. When you can get people out of their vehicles or have them living closer to where they work, then you can make an impact, a real impact. But Houston's been building for years and years and years, and they haven't built their way out of congestion.
And so what you get is an exponential curve to failure in that system. We've just adopted a system based upon building highways in the wilderness in order to open that land up that has very finite capacity.
One of the worst sins of our society is to put all our eggs in the urban sprawl basket so that we built a city which can't be served with alternatives very effectively.
People love having that independence, that the ability to cover long distance affords them. They can buy a huge home, and live quite far from their work.
We have 5% of the world's population, and we use 20% of the resources. Something's wrong.
One of the interesting things that you can do is make a graph of our use of, say, fossil fuels over the course of human history. And what you get is you get basically a completely flat line at zero up until about the year 18-something, say like 1860 or 1870. And then you get this massive spike that spikes up until about 2032, and then it drops back down to zero because all the oil is gone. From the perspective of human history, from the very beginning until the present, most societies have been car-free, and somehow they managed to get through that experience without, eventually everyone in those societies died, but I guess that's going to happen to us too.
What we need is a new balance. We have to redress what has become a horrific imbalance, where it's not safe to ride a bicycle.
Bicycle ridership among school-aged children is down like 75% nationwide. Kids don't ride bikes anymore. I mean, a bicycle isn't considered a necessary implement of childhood like it was when I was a kid.
Safety is a luxury good. It's a superior good, and we are going to try to buy more of it one way or another. And one way we buy it is by throwing ourselves in these 3-ton, 4-ton, 5-ton vehicles.
People buy SUVs for their children because they say SUVs are safer, and they quote that if you collide with another car, the other driver is more than 6 times more likely to be killed than you are. What kind of safety is this, and what kind of morals is this?
Communities that are livable and safe and attractive for people these days have a really nice mix of people who drive cars. In fact, that's usually the largest percentage. But then there'll be 5 to 7 to 8% that will be riding buses or mass transit of some kind. There'll be 5 to 7 to 8% that'll be riding bikes, and then there'll be another 4 to 10% that'll be walking.
In Toronto, approximately 51% of the trips made are made by foot, by bicycle, or by transit as opposed to being made by car.
When you build a city for people who are on foot, you wind up with a city that I think is healthier, and so somebody would take the time, say, to carve a lintel above their door, and somebody walking by might notice it. Whereas in a city designed for automobiles, it's a waste of time to carve your lintel because if you're going past it at 60 miles per hour, you don't have time to look anyway. And I think that in modern American cities, we've lost so many of those things that we don't even realize that they're gone.
Part of what's encouraging with this notion of the new urbanism and so on is trying to establish communities again where you can work near where you live.
Travel is an economic issue. When people sense that it is costing them too much to pay for gas and upkeep on their car, then they will be more amenable to alternative modes of travel.
A really simple and intelligent thing like $3 a gallon gasoline tax. Let's cure the problem.
When it's like Europe, when they do everything in the United States to make it so that it's more difficult, more expensive, and more trouble to drive a car than it is to walk, then they'll stop driving their car, and they'll still do it reluctantly.
I think America loves the automobile, the freedom that it gives, and they're very, very reluctant to get out of those automobiles and try something like bicycles.
Anytime it's
really windy or rainy or cold, or you need to be transporting children or groceries or merchandise, the bicycle is not a very practical way to get around.
Dear editor, dreamers of the future, set your imaginations free enough to picture a car-free downtown Austin. Then imagine a downtown Austin with twice the number of cars. Picture this car-packed downtown on an August afternoon. Then make your plans for downtown Austin's future. Yours truly, Amy Babbage.
America doesn't have a love affair with the car. It's something worse than that, something much seedier, something more like, an incestuous pedophilic relationship with cars.
In Texas, it's considered a God-given right to be able to get in your 10,000-pound car and drive halfway across town and get a quart of milk.
The stress level and the aggressiveness of drivers is higher. Austin truly used to be a laid-back place. The bigger Austin gets physically, as it sprawls, the soul of the city is receding.
I think it's just a quality of life issue. When they realize that they spend all their time in the car and all their time on a freeway, and then all their time getting off a freeway in order to get somewhere, and they live in distant neighborhoods on cul-de-sacs and don't know their neighbors, I think at some point people wake up and say, is this really a way to live your life?
You just go into any gym and see the folks that have sat in evening rush hour traffic to drive to the gym, and then they get on a stationary bike.
You can spend that $200 that you spend on a gym a year and go buy you a bicycle and ride around.
People who ride a bicycle have an appreciation for life, an appreciation for the life going on around them, and for their own person as well.
What most people think is like, well, I can't ride a bicycle to work because I've got to wear my three-piece polyester suit. What a bicyclist starts to think is, why am I even wanting to wear a three-piece polyester suit, right? Does it make me a better worker? Am I comfortable? Does it make me a happier person? Well, the answer to all those questions is probably no, right?
We need to really develop a program that makes people think about other transit options and make your car be your last one. Can I ride my bike on this trip? Can I walk?
The way to get people to ride bikes more would be not on the pollution tip and not on the economics tip, but on the fun and the coolness thing.
I don't think we're going to avoid ecological doom without considering the alternatives, and bikes are human power, people power.
Human power is the sexiest form of energy, and the bike is a means of perfecting the human soul, so we couldn't do it without bikes.
These are my wheels.
Way-oh, freeway is not the only way home. Way-oh, 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 freeway is not the only way home. Freeway goes like a crow, flies straight.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Bike road twist like a mean rattlesnake.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Come traffic planners now, look at all the choices.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Come traffic planners now, look at all the choices.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Take Shanks' mare, wheelchair, 3-speed bike.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Take Shanks' mare, wheelchair, 3-speed bike.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Way-oh, way-oh.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Way-oh, way-way.
Freeway is not the only way home.
A beautiful dream of town Nirvana.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Mighty car park, smog bonanza.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Take Shanks' mare, wheelchair, 3-speed bike.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Take Shanks' mare, wheelchair, 3-speed.
In the last year, I've bought 1 gallon of gasoline for my weed eater, and I still have 3/4 of it left.
I still have a car, and I use it about once a week. Earlier this year, I tried to see how long I could go on a tank of gas, and I think I got about two and a half months.
I rode my bike from Massachusetts to Texas, and the most common reactions to it are, "You're crazy, I could never do that." And both of those things are false.
Freeway is not the only way home.
Well,